Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay, so yeah, jara ocho karo. So what we are doing is a question that Arjuna asked: what is Jnanam and what is Gneyam? Okay, so Gneyam is to be known and Jnanam is means of knowing it. So this question, as I said, can be answered in many different ways, but Lord Krishna answered it in a very nice way as to, if you were to know this knowledge, what are the necessary conditions in terms of values and how you live your life. Okay, so the first value that we saw was amanitvam. Okay, amanitvam is somebody who demands respect from others, and amanitvam is the one who does not depend upon others' respect for one's well-being. Okay, it is not an advice. It's not said, oh, you should be indifferent to people giving you respect. When people give you respect, you are bound to feel good, right? It's not like not feeling good or being indifferent. What it says is, so many of our activities are centered around what and what respect we will get from others. Okay, so it almost becomes a demand, and as long as it is a demand, then what? You think that the whole world is going to behave with you and give you the kind of respect in the form of respect that you want, you will always be disappointed, right? Because not one person behaves exactly according to your likes. So therefore it says to reduce dependency on others. So how does one reduce dependency on others? It's just by actually working on one's own self-esteem. That is the only way. Okay, only when I lack self-esteem, then it matters to me so much what others say or think about me. Okay, if I have a healthy, good self-esteem, which is not arrogance, okay, so when people give me an input, which is something which I probably don't like or whatever, I think about it. It's not like, you totally reject and you are just self-confident. You think about it objectively, you make changes that you have to make, and then if you think that it is unfair, you let it go, right? So this is something which is very important, because that is sanity. That gives you that inner strength to deal with many different kinds of people with different feedbacks and having some independence from opinion of others. Okay. The second value that we saw, so I don't want to go into detail because this is just a revision. The second value we saw is adambhitvam. Dambha is something which is the pretense, where I showed you that in the society that we live, okay, unfortunately so much of what is success is we get inputs. Okay, what is success is probably having a very fancy car, a very fancy villa, a very fancy all designer clothes. I mean, this is the only way we view success. And how many people actually live a life like that? How many you think? Not exactly. So we've created a society where 99% of the people feel inadequate in one form or the other. Okay, or even this whole big image of women being like stick women are epitome of beauty. Even that is totally unrealistic, because when you look at those models, they look like totally pencil. They look like pencil with no glow, nothing. But on a stage, they, that whole big thing is created, and as a result, if you don't really think about it, it's a new phenomena where everybody starts feeling inadequate. All women feel inadequate, and all women have not proper healthy relationship with food. I'm so happy here people have nicely they eat. So that's very good. It shows that you don't have any problem. You just are enjoying. So that's nice. It's nice to have a good relationship with food. I'll always notice that. It's lovely to do that. So therefore, this is something, when we create a society where everybody feels inadequate, what is our natural tendency? Our natural tendency is to kind of show that we, because people are always assessing you based on the answers that you give or what they think you are. So there is always this need to show. We put up a facade. Okay? This facade that we put, where we show ourselves in a better light than what we are, this is what we call dambha.
Okay. If you don't mind, I mean,
yeah, exactly. So if you don't mind being labeled, then that's fine, right? I mean, that is. In fact, it is interesting that the more you don't mind it, the less people label you. If you get caught in their framework and if you get scared, right, then more and more they impose on you their value. But the minute you say you're not, you're independent, you assert that, the whole equation in a relationship changes. This is really true. Okay, so this is what we call dambitvam. Is you have to find your own confidence in whatever you are doing. You have to think about it. You have to create your own standards, right? So then that is not indifference, but that some nurturing is required for that. This spirituality, our teacher used to say, is not for a person who feels dejected with the world, is disillusioned, thinking that the world is no good. Because if you think the world is no good and I'm no good, right, how can this big vision sit in a mind which makes you see your limitlessness? It will not. Because if you feel so small and so insignificant and so dejected in life, you can't hold this vision of Vedanta. So that means you have to have a good self-esteem. You have to be well nurtured. You need to be. Okay? So dambitva means the less you are dependent on other people's this thing, but at the same time take care of your nurturing, that whole pretense goes away. Okay? The third thing we saw is ahimsa. Himsa is both. One is physical himsa and the second is verbal himsa, mental himsa. Okay? So therefore, ahimsa is a value which I think obviously most of us are not people who are stealing, and we are not, those are, we don't. But hurting others, who can say that I've never hurt anybody else? It's impossible. In fact, people that we love the most, right, we end up hurting the most, or what, we get hurt the most by them. Okay? So therefore, ahimsa is a value which is, if you are careful about himsa, then what happens? Why do we hurt people that we love the most? Okay? So according to a psychological model, what happens is that throughout our life, we pick up, due to circumstances, right, or due to some feedback that we get from people that we love in the childhood, somehow we take in and we create a picture of, let's say, unresolved emotions. Unresolved emotions means I'm angry, but I haven't addressed it and I have not verbalized it, I have not thought about it. So this anger which is there, it sits with me. Okay? Sadness, fears, all these emotions, because from the young age we are told that these are not, good girls don't cry. This is the picture that people give, right? That any fear means you're a sissy person. So that means you get rejected in the society when you're expressing what they call negative emotions. But actually nobody can avoid those emotions, because emotions is part of the brain design. Okay, so the only way we have learned to deal with this emotion is to what? Hide it. Okay, or to just kind of put it in the background. As long as you do that, it what? Continues to rule you. So this is why all these unaddressed emotions, where will you then express? What they say is, the minute you become close to somebody, generally when you interact with people, you have certain boundaries which are all there, right? I mean, you are careful about what you say, how you behave and all that, right? But once you become intimate with that person, those boundaries what? Start falling. When those boundaries start falling, that's when all these things which are held unaddressed, they get projected. Okay, so therefore the person that you love the most, unknowingly you throw all your anger. So many people tell me that, you know, my husband or my wife, outside he's so nice and he's so friendly and he's just so kind, but you should come home and see how he behaves. This is a very common thing that I hear, right? He gets angry at every small thing. He puts me down. He's doing this, he's doing that, and it's like you won't even recognize. When I tell you how he is, you won't even believe it when you see him outside. Okay, so you have all your defenses up, but when they drop, if you have not taken care of all these unaddressed emotions helplessly, okay, in fact, that shows that the person feels so comfortable with you that these guards are no longer there and all this just comes out. Okay, so therefore, how do you then change this behavior? The only way to change this behavior is to recognize first that this is happening. Because unless the person recognizes what is the dynamic of that, most of the time we are in denial. Because we always think when something happens, when some situation makes you angry, you always think it's the other person who has made you angry. Okay, so therefore you don't even recognize that it is my things which are unaddressed. So therefore every time it always feels somebody else is at fault. Okay, either one person or group of people or society or government. So all your anger is always with reference to others, who no matter who they are, everybody is wrong, and this self-righteousness, I'm fine. Okay, so this is something that continues until you recognize, hey, if I want the world to change, in order for my anger to go, I will always be angry. Okay, because the world is what it is, but anger is my problem, and I need to address it. So therefore, ahimsa can only come when there is a little bit of self-reflection and self-correction, without which ahimsa is not possible. Okay, so therefore, non-hurting requires certain self-reflection. Ultimately, what does Vedanta do, which is more than, right, psychology? What Vedanta does is gives you a little bit of a higher perspective by saying that anybody that you are angry with for whatever has happened, you have to kind of, understand the person's behavior from the standpoint of, that person's background. Okay, so therefore the person is what that person is, because that person itself is helplessly doing it. Just as we are helpless, the other person.
I have a question.
Yes.
Because this is not just one way.
Yeah.
If somebody expects something of you,
Yes.
you can either say no or yes.
Yes.
Now, if you want to say no, but that will upset the other person, so you say yes. If you keep saying yes all the time,
Yeah. See,
then
ahimsa
you are
does.
doing things which you don't want to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. See, ahimsa now
but on
that.
the other hand, if I insist on doing something, then the other person gets angry. Without.
See, the problem is, I'm very happy that you bring this point, because we think that always saying yes is not hurting. This is a very deeply ingrained value that we are given. Okay, so that means when somebody is demanding from you certain things, even if you don't want it, right?
Yeah.
You think that, oh, now if I say no, it will create a problem, so you say yes. Okay, so when you mean no and you say yes, it creates a conflict, right? Because you always feel what, that you have sacrificed your own interest, right? And the minute you feel in your vision that you have sacrificed your own interest, and imagine it's a pile, right? You have sacrificed pehli baar ek karyu, pachi then second time, then third time, then fourth time, then fifth time, then what? Then you will explode, because nobody can take ultimately that I can't keep on sacrificing my self-interest. And this is so true, because I have met so many women, right? Initially they get into a unequal relationship, okay, where they give in order to avoid conflict. Okay, now over a period of time they give in and they give in and they give in, and one day they find themselves so dissatisfied they just want to walk out because they can't take it anymore. Okay, so what we are saying is, ahimsa does not mean that you just passively accept whatever people are saying without any resistance. Okay, ahimsa only means that when I choose to say no, right? If I have to say no, I have to say no, right? But when I do that, I take utmost care that I am not violent. I don't unnecessarily hurt human beings, right? So I said, yeah, I feel like this, so therefore I am not doing it, and you explain, right? We are so bipolar in our thinking. Either we think that we fight or we are totally passive. This is the way we create the world. Okay, from one extreme to the other, black or white.
Or what is called fight or flee.
Flight or flee. Okay, so this is our whole vision of the world is like that. So what we have to learn is, in every situation, in between those two extremes, there is a range of possibilities, and the mind is becoming refined when you begin to explore those range of possibilities.
But it doesn't end with one, then
yeah, exactly. So that is true. So that means that you can't totally, exactly. That's why you have to leave. At a certain point in time, you have to, if you're, when somebody doesn't behave or expect, do things according to your wishes, doesn't mean that you have to be violent to them. So that is ahimsa. Exactly. So that means that refraining, ahimsa is only with reference to your choices, right? How do you handle people when they don't do things according to your wishes, right? Because if they do things according to your wishes, ahimsa is very natural. Okay, there is no conflict. Ahimsa is exactly ahimsa, exactly. Right? So that means if there is no conflict, ahimsa is very natural. You don't even have to think about it. Only in case of a conflict, right, there is this whole effort that you make to what? As much as possible, what? On your side, be careful that you are not victimizing others. That is that very proactive, because our normal tendency is to immediately blame somebody else. That is human nature.
Also taking responsibility.
Taking responsibilities,
yes.
exactly.
You're taking the easy way out.
Yes.
At that moment.
Yes, absolutely.
That also piles up. So it's not always sacrifice. I think that is the most dangerous.
Absolutely.
No, I just wanted to, you said that between Vedanta and psychology, Vedanta handles, to me, what you spoke of so far, I feel it's all psychology.
It is psychology, that's true. The only aspect that Vedanta has is this whole thing of ethics. What is
No,
a value added? Because when a psychologist is talking, it is only talking about in terms of your cause and effect relationship and taking care of your, this emotions and things like that. When Vedanta talks about human growth as such, it is talking at a bigger level. It includes psychology, but it also includes things like ethics. For example, that if you hurt others, right, you get hurt in the process. This is what we call laws. Okay, so
what you are
therefore
talking about
it is
universal
something,
laws.
there these universal laws where any time you go against certain values, then it all comes back to you. Okay, so this is a value added. The second thing is ultimately Vedanta resolves everything in Ishvara. Okay, Ishvara is that intelligence which is manifesting in form of the whole universe through series of cause and effect relationships.
One more question, I'm sorry. Dr. Shrikant used to say something like, he calls it banyabu, in the sense that you must always assess what you need to do so that you get benefit in a transaction. For instance, it's a commercial transaction, or let's say we are an organization, we are dealing with another organization. So, based on the power, if the other person has more power, you give it, because you are going to get something. Something is better than nothing, kind of. But will that also, what do you think of this whole process?
No, I don't know. I don't know what he means, and I'm not able to comment. I need to understand a little bit more as to what he means and why he says what he says. So we can talk about it a little bit later, later, because I need to explore a little bit more. I can't just offhand comment on his statement. I don't know, right? So ahimsa. The next one is what we call. Up to now we saw these three. Now kshantihi. Kshantihi means accommodation. Did we do this? No. I don't think we did do this. Right? Accommodation also is always, when everything is fine, accommodating is easy, right? You don't need to accommodate because everything is fine. Accommodation is necessary only when what?
There are conflicts.
There are conflicts, exactly. So therefore, what here is the accommodation is, this is where I wanted to bring that ultimately what they say is ultimate accommodation comes when you resolve all that whole of the person. Instead of trying to change the person, what? Understand that there is psychology behind it, and that person has a psychology behind it, and there is this whole big change. The whole big chain makes the person, the causes within causes, within causes, within causes, makes the person what that person is. You can only, what can you do?
Not take it personal.
You can only state, see one thing, because the person does not change, then we think that we just have to be passive and accept it. You only can state with all the honesty what you have to say. You have to do it. That is being proactive. That is not being passive. And take enough care to not unnecessarily cause pain. That's your responsibility. But after having done that, right, you leave it to that other person to process it. What happens most of the time when I see all the people, right, you keep on repeating the same thing and the person has already heard you once, right, and then it becomes a demand. Then what happens? The other person resists. The other person's defenses are all out. So the person is just not available. Okay. In fact, it is counterproductive. The more you say, the less effect it is going to have. The person is just going to automatically switch off. Okay. So this is where we say accommodation means you state what you have to state. You say it in a much, be careful about how you say. Being careful about how you say. Being careful about how you say, it means when you talk to somebody, you don't accuse. Okay? You don't tell the person, you're like that, you're like that, you're like that. The minute you say that, the person is what? Again going to counterattack you. So this is how you enter into a big fight, because you attack and then the person attacks you in return. Okay? When you have to say about something, instead of saying you're like that, you have to say I feel like this. When you say I feel like this, there is, our teacher used to say 100% truth in that. 100% truth, because this is how you feel and this is the reason because of which I feel like this. This is 100% truth. When you say you are like that, may not be like that. That could be just your perception. Okay, so therefore there may or may not be truth. When you talk about yourself and your feelings, you're honest. Okay? And you can even say, because you can say I was feeling very sad because you said this. Generally we don't express our emotions. We don't, because the minute you tell somebody that I felt really sad when you said that, actually nobody wants to really hurt you. But we just say, why did you say this to me? That is our, then he will say, they'll say, what do you mean? Right? So this is how it all just starts. Okay? So, Pallavi is back. So there is this.
I feel like I'm X-rayed. I don't feel like that everywhere.
So
She got a chance.
yeah. So there is this whole big thing of what we call non-violent communication. Non-violent communication is you communicate your displeasure, you communicate your sadness, you communicate your anger. It's not non-communication. Okay? Communication, but not in an attacking manner. Just say what you have to say. You're respecting the other person and you're giving opportunity for that other person to also then see you and how you feel, and also to then express what was going on in his or her mind. That's how you enter into a communication. Communication is very challenging when things are not pleasant. When you have to give a compliment to somebody, communication is very easy. Right? But
Actually,
when you have to give a
someone,
feedback,
that person doesn't know what to say.
because
No, but this is the same thing that they teach you also in how you communicate with your children. You don't tell the child that you are bad, you've done it.
Exactly.
You say that this thing that you have done is wrong.
Yeah.
Instead of saying that you're a bad girl or a bad
Yeah.
boy.
See, this morning only, since you're here, I wanted to bring it out, right? So this morning we have a class, and as a result of this, there is this whole part in Bhagavad Gita which will come, where they talk about a human being and how there are two things that we all carry within us, which are burdens, right? One is guilt and the second is hurt. Okay? Guilt is what I should have done and I didn't do, and what I should not have done and I did it. That is guilt. Okay? And hurt is exactly the opposite with reference to somebody else, right? That what that person should have done this to me, but they didn't do it, and they should not have done and they did it. That is how guilt and hurt is. Okay? So this morning what was happening is, they said that when we discipline a child, okay, we keep on telling the child that this is something which is wrong, you're wrong, and you actually, that person feels so inadequate. Okay, so you actually almost expose the child, and you say that, for child you're the universe, and you're kind of rejecting the child. Okay, so when you say you are like that, you are a naughty boy, you are like this, you are like that, the child feels destroyed. You don't realize the impact on a kind of a mind which is just in its formative years. You hear that. Okay, you're wrong, you're naughty, you're not good. All these is something which creates a burden, and the way the child receives it is not only that I'm internalizes, right? I'm not good, I'm like this, I'm like that, and not only that, the child creates one's own story based on that. Okay, my mom doesn't love me. Okay, she hates me, and she doesn't approve of me. Okay, So that means these are the formative years where you are building your self-image and people are destroyed. And the only way we give our feedback is through what? Carrot and stick. Okay, you did something good, then you do well, and then you did something wrong, then I'm going to punish you. This is the only way. That is what we call disciplining a child. Okay, nobody thinks about how can I instill values in my child. Okay, how can I create a child with a nice good decision making capacity? How do I create a child who is going to have a broader perspective in life? People don't think about these things. They have a very narrow, oh, you did this, so therefore now you're punished. Your sense of development of child is so limited, and you actually limit a child. A child is full of possibilities. And in that formative years, giving that wrong information, you actually distort that whole thing. I will just tell you, it's something which is very, very subtle, and I love to talk about it because very few people pick it up. Okay, I was working in Bangkok, and my boss, she's a Sri Lankan. Okay, it's a very, very evolved person. So she was working full time with me. So she had a daughter. So one day she told me, she says, my daughter, 5-6 years old, right? So she said that she's not willing to share her things with others, right? And generally nobody cares. So she was very observant, and she says that this is not a right thing to do. From young age, you have to teach your child to share things and not just hold and not just keep everything to yourself, right? Then what happened is she started looking why the child is feeling like that, why she is so possessive about things that she has, and why she is so unwilling to share, right? Then she said that when she started observing the child and the nanny who was looking after the child, and she observed. Now this is something which is incredible how smart she is. She observed that this child was eating, and nanny used to, what is nanny's interest? How to make the child eat as fast as possible, right? This is how the workers are, right? So she would say, if you don't eat this now, what? The neighbor's children will come and take it. When you do this, you create fear in this child of what? Somebody else will come and taking things away from you. Okay? She is doing things so innocently, right? This nanny is not doing something wrong or something big or whatever, right? But that is creating this whole big tendency. It's creating fear in this little child that my things will be taken away by others. Okay? Then she becomes what? Extremely, right? Very possessive about things. She told the nanny, she said, don't, if that you want her to eat, you can give a different message. Don't create fear. Don't tell somebody will take it away. Say that, yeah, see, you want to be big, you want to be nourished, and how this food will nourish you, you'll become strong, you can give different message, completely different messages. Okay? Small things, but very sick. We overlook, we just don't even think about these things. That she was thinking about something so small but yet so significant, to catch a tendency of a child, follow up and see where it is coming from and correcting it in a positive manner, giving right messages. This is what we call intelligent living.
That's what positive reinforcement rather than negative.
Yeah. So every time, so this morning I also told that, generally what happens is that a child has a tendency to eat junk food. They like all these things which are unhealthy the most, right? So we have a tendency to do what? Don't eat this, and if you eat this, then you will not have this, and constantly we give, constantly reprimand in one way or the other. Okay, so what I told them is, I remember my grandmother, okay, she came up to me, and she told me something which was very nice and very factual. She said, she didn't tell me, oh, you should not eat this and you should not eat that. She said, that whatever you eat, how long does it remain in your tongue? How long? A minute. Okay. And for that moment gratification, you totally ignore what it is going to go in and do for you, and how long it stays in your digestive system and on your body as a fat. How long? Okay. She says all our decision making is like that.
Instant gratification.
Instant gratification.
But
And
why
we
do you call it-
ignore.
Why do you call it the childhood? Because it happens to us also.
No, what I mean to say, in your formative years, when you are taught like this, instead of being reprimanded, today
That's
no
fine,
junk
that's
food,
fine, yeah,
right?
that's
This
fine.
is what, so that means this is, the child is going to grow up to be a different human being. This is why you see me as a Vedantist.
It's very good, but no, but I mean it happens to us also. I don't
No, what I mean to say,
we like sweets,
yeah, exactly.
which we should not.
Well, no, what I mean to say is that
So find a method of
find
tasting it and then putting it in.
or take a little. Take a little. What I mean to say is,
that's what you
when
create
when
like a
when
fake
you
little.
when you create that kind of a person, okay, now that person is going to grow up to be not a well-adjusted child. And you think that you've done your best to discipline and you've done everything. Okay, so this is where this is accommodation is a very, very big value. Okay, how to intervene? Accommodation we think is all passive. Not doing anything is accommodation. We are not talking about not doing anything. How to intervene? Okay, how to be least violent. Okay, do what you need to do, give the feedback that you have to give, okay, and at the same time be careful about the impact, about your own words, how you express it, and that is what we call accommodation. Okay, and in spite of all of that, what if the person is not changing? The person has one's own psychological order to fathom. Then you leave the person alone, and at the same time help the person whenever the person needs help. Okay. It was very nice. I remember my father telling me that when I was 18, 19 years old, when I was going to the US for my studies, he told me that I've given you all the values that I thought that I needed to give you. Now you're an independent human being, and you have to make your own decisions, and you have to live your own life. If you need my help, I'm always there to help you, but I'm not going to anymore tell you what you should do and what you should not do. This left, the sense of responsibility. When I went to the US, I'm a responsible human being. My father trusts me. He's not constantly looking and saying, are you taking drugs? This is how, are you doing this? Are you doing that? What time did you come home? We give such wrong inputs and we don't realize, and we think that the fault belongs to the other person. We destroy a child and we then say my child is no good and we totally don't recognize, we are oblivious to our own responsibility. This is something, accommodation means letting people be who they are but not being indifferent to them. Give your inputs, tell what you have to say, okay? Help them to see something more.
But then, you just said right now, you still have that expectation of change.
Absolutely.
Do you have an expectation of change?
See, the thing is, you can have an expectation of change if something you don't like, but you have to incorporate the fact that no changes are going to take place overnight.
Or that option is with that
So that the option is with that person. Because even with reference to your own change, people come to Gita, okay, and those they want to change. Okay, in spite of wanting to change, there is this whole habitual pattern of behavior that will prevail sometimes. right? So that means imagine that you want to change and still it is slow. So if the other person hasn't really appreciated the value for changing, how much slower it is going to be that. So incorporate that. No, but you can expect, because you can't live a life without expectation. So therefore you do expect, but in that expectation incorporate all these realities, that it is not going to be, then you're realistic.
One example of accommodation I can think of is from my school days. We had a teacher who was very, he used to teach well, but he was never violent. He would never beat you or anything like that. There was one student who was very rambunctious and he disturbed the class and all that. So the first time this teacher gave him a little beating on the back, but with the hollow of his palm so that the child should not be hurt. And that boy realized that he doesn't want to hurt me, he's only trying to give me a message. And there were tears in his eyes. Then he became a changed person after that.
Amazing.
So the
That's
teacher
true.
accommodated the student.
Yeah. This is true.
And we were all stunned. After that his behavior was perfect.
Yeah. Small things like that can trigger major changes, because human beings are
I
sensitive.
still remember, this is how many years ago? 60 years ago.
Human beings are sensitive. They are highly sensitive. Okay? Something, you trigger a right chord and they will change. But how to do it? How to access that part in them, and that activate that part in them. And partly Gita does that. Right?
Right to say that, as she asked, then we should not have expectations.
No, see, one thing, Vaishali, that it's impossible to live life without expectation.
What I'm asking is,
We are not
you should be smart so that the opposite person doesn't see that you are expecting that.
I think what you need
Smart
to
enough to see also.
No, but like be subtle about it. That's what I
be
mean.
subtle. Exactly, that's true. Be subtle about it,
Yes.
because otherwise, see, some amount of expectation is healthy, and you at the same time everything will happen according to your expectation is a wrong expectation. And in the magnitude and in the speed and everything will that is not. So at the same time you can't just then say that I'm passive. The passivity is not accommodation. Unfortunately, this culture is, our culture is such that we think passivity is accommodation.
In fact, I can quote one poem which says, Koina, I mean it's Gujarati, કોઈનો પ્રેમ ક્યારેય ઓછો નથી, તમારા expectations વધારે છે.
It's not true.
It's not
No, it's not true.
It's not true.
Yeah.
Can you translate?
It says, no one's love is less. It's your expectations that they are. It's expectations
That is
are
high.
more.
That's not true. Certain amount of expectation is necessary and is healthy, right? And you state what you have to say. You say it non-violently. Then you help the person grow. That is what we call accommodation. Without labeling the person, without accusing the person, this is what we call
No,
accommodation.
I mean, all my life, when things have not gone my way,
Yeah.
I have sort of gone through this. It's okay. Even if my expectations, maybe I was expecting more. I have treated myself that way.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, I think probably you can refine slightly that, yeah, maybe my expectations are right, but not everybody behaves according to my expectations, So that means that also you have to give freedom.
That frees me.
That frees
from
you.
that.
Yeah, exactly. That may not be that you see, in this case, you are kind of taking blame on yourself by saying, oh, my expectations were high. You can be objective and say, no, my expectations were not high, they are realistic expectations. But there is no rule that the other person behaves exactly according to your expectation. Then
So you don't
you
load
neither
yourself with-
load yourself or load somebody else. This is what we call freedom. Otherwise, what happens? You either just blame the other person or you take on all the load yourself. Oh, my expectations are too high. Oh, my, you keep on beating yourself then. right? Putting everything onto you, take all the blames for you. That is not objectivity. Just factual. Just this is how things are. Okay? In your decision making, be ready that things will not always happen your way. That's it. Then you're free. You do what you have to do, and at the same time you have a certain amount of freedom. Okay? So that is what we call accommodation, arjavam. The next value is arjavam. Arjavam is straightforwardness. What is straightforwardness?
Just say the Sanskrit word.
Arjavam. Arjavam.
And what was for accommodation?
Accommodation is kshanti. Okay. So arjavam is straightforwardness. Straightforwardness means that there is an alignment between what you think, what you say, and what you do. That kind of deliberate, behavior. You don't just say things. Sometimes it is very interesting because when Surya came to India and people would, they are very nice, So they would say, like, come home for lunch, come home for dinner. And then, so come home. Then Surya said, then at the end, it's like, what is your address? Where are you? We haven't exchanged telephone, we don't know where you live, and you're calling 10 minutes, ow. Thus, 10, if you say once, then it's okay, but 10 times you tell somebody, then you don't mean it, because then he's like, so he didn't even give. I said, yeah, but this is a natural, exactly, they just tell, exactly.
It's being polite.
It's being polite, exactly. So that is the general.
It was very rude.
So you,
That is what we
so
say,
you,
kehta kuch hai, karta kuch hai.
yeah, exactly.
It's a way of life here.
Yeah.
Yeah, in India.
Yeah, in India.
But it's not generalized.
No, but what
there
I
are
mean.
certain things.
So that means.
There are people who, we had a neighbor on the ground floor. Invariably, whenever we met, they used to say, Ayana, chai bini. I mean, we have never gone, but they never stopped saying. You say,
We are very colleagues and
They-
wherever we are,
I
they didn't even mean कि नहीं बुलाना
No,
है.
no. But
that was their way of saying hello. Ayana, chai.
they were very nice.
exactly.
These are
But
cultural.
Yeah,
It's a cultural.
but what is interesting is that when you say things, try to mean it, right? So that is we are so unconscious that when your words are not just floating, just release words in the air. When you say something, you have to at least mean it. Then if it happens or not,
That's
it
what
is
they say,
okay.
Once words come out of your mouth, you can't take them back.
You can't take them back.
Better think about what you have.
Right, exactly. Be deliberate in what you say. That is a big, this is nowadays, they have this very important thing which is in Europe, it's very, very popular, which is what we call mindfulness. So many of our habits and so many of the things that we do are just mechanical. We don't even think about it, right? And we don't even give it a thought. This mindfulness, general mindfulness about your behavior, about your speech, about your action, it's a very healthy thing, right? You become a deliberate person. You become a person who stands for something. Okay? Imagine Gandhi. He came to India and he had this dream of freeing India from the British. The British are not some small this thing, right? And he moved the whole nation to make them do what he wanted to do. Where is that strength? Where is it coming from? Strength of that character, alignment. Alignment means then naturally when you say, it creates a weight.
Yeah.
Okay? Because you are doing it. It's not like you are just saying. So this is where this alignment gives you power. It is a power which is an incredible power. Okay? Sometimes even within teachers of Vedanta you can see it very clearly. Okay? People who are just talking Vedanta and people who try to live Vedanta. They may be saying the same thing, but the words carry so much more weight when it is coming from a person who's trying to, who's aligned. Okay? So therefore, that's why in a guru and all, they look for not just your skills of Sanskrit but the character. It is amazing.
You respect the person who has character.
So I will tell you, right? We do this retreats, right? So 7 days people listen to our talks, and from morning to night there are all classes after classes after classes. At the end, we ask them to give a feedback. Okay, so generally, what do you expect? They don't see us much. They only see us in the class and the teaching and all that. About 30 or 40% of the feedback is about the skills with which we talk. 60% or 60 or 50% of the feedback is about what they think how we are. So that means when they are listening to you, they are not exactly. They are not just listening to what you are saying. Constantly, they are seeing how we behave. When issues come up, how do we deal with them, right? Or when people come to us with whatever, how do we respond? So that means so much of their feedback comes from what they think about us, our character, rather than just what we say in the class. That is amazing.
But that happens for us also, in the institute, especially the EMP batches. They give feedback about
the person,
us, then more than the content.
The content, exactly.
It happens here also. No? Like my first observation is about you both. As a husband by like him sitting. I mean, the first observation is that you actually come to know real Vedanta is, like him respecting her in a different way. You can respect by keeping quiet also, but in respecting her.
That many people have noticed that the attentiveness with which he has also studied for 3.5 years, and he himself is a teacher, but he is not like whatever,
You being free.
In his presence. That's so true.
Natural, it's very natural. Because we all want the best. So we see if there is. We are all agenda bound.
You can't help it.
You can't help it. Okay, and in that assessment, when the person is not aligned, actually we assess that person. That's why we don't take that person seriously.
We don't believe in whatever
We don't, because this person is a loser. Okay, exactly. Right?
upright thread.
Alright? So therefore, this alignment is something which makes you a person to be reckoned with. You're a together person. Okay? So that is Arjavam. Okay? The other one is Arjavam. Rajasva Bhava. Okay? Ruju Bhava. So straightforwardness. Ruju is, Ruju? Oh my God, wow.
And we felt so compelled to name a Ruju at that time because we understood the meaning of the word. And we had to keep it with R.
This Ruju is not in this.
This is what we call, there is a Vriddhi. So this becomes an abstract noun. So Rujoho Bhavaha becomes Arjavam. There is a. It is the abstract noun. It's a derivation of it. It's an abstract noun and it takes a Vriddhi.
What is the exact meaning of Ruju?
Ruju means straight, no bad.
Where is Ruju?
It's Arjavam. A derivation.
of Ruju.
Yeah,
Correct,
Ruju.
correct.
Okay. Then Acharyopasanam. Acharyopasanam is some learning that takes place. Now here it is in order for you to learn from somebody, you need to have a respect. It's impossible to learn from somebody for whom you have no respect. Okay? Otherwise your mind will be closed. You will be very skeptical. Exactly. Absolutely. right? So Acharyopasana means that whoever that Acharya, even if it is physics or economics or whatever, right? Whatever the subject matter, you need to have a certain amount of respect for the teacher. But here, the whole teaching is about what? About limitlessness, right? It's about your true nature. Okay, it is also about the reality of Ishvara. It is about resolving the ultimate equation between Ishvara and Jiva. Okay, that is a huge thing. It's not a small teaching. Okay, it's not some spiritual blah blah blah. Oh, you do this and you don't do that. It's not that. Okay, to resolve that equation, then the growth that is necessary. So all that, if you want to learn from somebody, you need to naturally have respect for that person. Okay? And this is what we call Acharyopasana. Now, unfortunately, what happens is when people don't understand, what they create is some kind of a rule. Okay, guru means guru gets this very elevated position, then you are like totally subservient, and you know that is not what is meant. It only means respect. Okay, respect doesn't mean total kind of a surrender and total kind of submissiveness. It
That doesn't mean that you can't challenge. Right?
absolutely right. Ideas, you need to you can't just accept everything that everybody says. So you need to stay with ideas. Okay, and you need to
What I
if you
understand from what she's saying is that respect would mean maybe in the later part it will come through.
and
So wait. Now I will wait for a person to explain only if I respect that.
exactly,
Otherwise I will say, this is not for us.
yeah, absolutely.
And in our Indian culture, especially where parents and grandparents, they believe that if you listen to me, you respect me. They do
Yeah.
not like challenging. They
Exactly.
do not like questioning.
Yes.
They do
Whereas
not allow questioning.
whereas Guru Shishya relationship has always been discussions. Always. Okay. Whether you look at Bhagavad Gita, it's a dialogue between
Yes.
what? Krishna and Arjuna. It's not only Krishna had finished his teaching by second chapter. Third chapter comes because Arjuna asks a question. Okay, so therefore there's all these 18 chapters because there were questions after questions after questions. Upanishads, every Upanishad is a dialogue between husband and wife, between the father and the son, between student and teacher. This is the Indian tradition of teaching. Guru Shishya Parampara.
No,
Guru
Amartya
In a
Shishya.
sense, we don't have space for all this. Our thinking has become very limited.
It has become very limited. You're
There is
absolutely
much,
right.
force.
There is,
Too much
yes,
of societal
exactly.
and too much of, I mean, it's completely, when you come to Vedanta class, you suddenly feel that actually we are so,
So evolved.
so deep.
We are so deep.
It's so deep.
Absolutely.
And how, what we've been taught from generations, actually we've been limiting ourselves. This is how it should be. Shoulds, there's so many shoulds in
Shoulds.
our lives.
So true. Absolutely true. That we come from a culture and tradition which is sophisticated, so open, so universal, so brilliant, right? And people have not understood the subtlety and nuances, and they've made it so narrow. Absolutely. Right. And this orthodoxy,
Then you want to search elsewhere for answers.
yes.
I was mentioning about Amartya Sen, he has written a book called The Argumentative
Indian. Yes.
Because argument is the essence of learning.
Yeah.
Unless you ask a question and you reply, how would I know? How would I know the differences? And this is the whole tradition. From
This is the whole
Shankaracharya's
tradition.
time, you
Yeah.
went all over the place arguing with people.
Exactly.
And won the argument.
Absolutely.
And then
All-
people given, yes, you are right.
Absolutely. What you are saying is absolutely right. At one point in time, India had become 80% Buddhist.
Yes.
Okay? And this Adi Shankaracharya, greatest scholar, he is the one, in fact, when I'm talking based on his commentaries, because we've studied those commentaries in Sanskrit, right, in the original. So he went and he debated with all the existing scholars of, especially Buddhism. There were two schools at that time that he argues with. One is what is called Kshanika Vijnanavadi, and the other one is Shunyavadi. Two schools of Buddhism, and even with all the other Vedikas, okay, Sankhya, Yoga, Vaisheshika, Nayayika, and he won all the arguments. This is how what Vedanta and Vedas, it was re-established in India. People again became Hinduism because it was not war or anything, not just discussions. And that's why when he writes his commentaries, he not only writes what he's saying, then he defends why he's saying what he's saying. He says where are the logical fallacies in what others are saying. He shows it. That's the whole, imagine your brain, how it develops. When you look at different standpoints, you examine, you begin to see the logical fallacies, and you test what you know, right, and make sure that it is not something which is contradicted by logic. It develops your whole thinking capacity. Okay? So therefore, teacher has to play that role. The teacher has to have that knowledge. It is not about just surrendering to the teacher, but to first find that teacher who has proper exposure to this whole teaching tradition, and then going to that teacher and listening with an open mind. Listening with an open mind is necessary, because so many things that Vedanta says are totally out of box. So therefore it requires you to have particularly an open mind. Okay? But at the same time, if you close it, if you just keep on blocking yourself, then there is no learning possible. So Acharya Upasana means right attitude towards the teacher, right? Then Shaucham, okay? Then Shaucham is cleanliness. Cleanliness is inner cleanliness and outside cleanliness. Okay, outside cleanliness is that when you keep your environment clean, then that is something which I again want to say something that my grandmother told me, because when you are young, I think I have said it in this class, right? That you throw things, your clothes here and there, and you don't necessarily keep everything in order. So instead of, people generally shout and say, now put it all in order and all. My grandmother was a very wise person. She told me that, you know what, the external environment that you keep is a reflection of how you are. I said, oh my God. So I said, I want to be, clean, a good person, so then I need to keep my environment clean. Okay? Because how you create your surrounding is, it's just you are expressing yourself. Cluttered. Exactly. When you are all cluttered, then your surroundings become cluttered. So this is where you learn to be clean. So in order to, and then I used to always find that if my desk, my job with the UN, we write many policy papers and also you have to do a lot of research. So there are lots of books on the thing. And the minute I cleaned up, I would always you read many things and it's all there. Then before writing anything, I would just clean my desk, then start writing.
Because therapy also, no? If you're confused, then clean your cupboard first.
Really?
Yeah,
you see,
give this as a
they give this.
recommendation.
You see, it's amazing. Atma Vinigraha means that in what does that certain mastery over yourself. Okay? What does it mean? In Kathopanishad, there is an analogy. There is an analogy that you come, there is a chariot, and then there are reins, and then there is a charioteer, and then there is the owner of the chariot. Okay, and that particular analogy is applied to human being. A human being comes on this earth with what? 5 horses are equivalent to 5 senses. Okay, what is the rein? Which is the mind. the charioteer, the person who guides the whole chariot, which is your body, is your buddhi, your intelligence. Okay, and who is the owner? You have come with this. Self is the owner. Okay, so you have come with your buddhi, your mind, and your body, and you have to live your life. Okay, if you have no plan as to where you want to go, what is the goal of life, what you have to do, then what will happen? Imagine the charioteer, which is running the whole show, is totally clueless. Okay? Then what will happen? What will decide where the chariot goes?
Whenever he feels like going here, he'll go left, right.
Exactly. That means, absolutely, it says the horses will run the show.
Yeah.
Horses will run the show because the senses will run the show. Okay, anything that you have 5 senses, and with those 5 senses there are infinite possibilities. You have eyes to see forms, and you can be traveling around the world to see different forms. If your eyes are to see art, you can be whole life immersed in one art or the other. Okay, infinite possibilities with your eyes, infinite possibility with your ears. Music, classical music, whatever, anything that you hear, infinite possibilities. Okay, your taste, tongue. What people become so more and more refined, and in terms of their taste, and they even one of my cousins, she is doing a course on some wine tasting, and all this slight differences between this wine and that wine, and it is like endless. And they have a degree course. I was like, what? What are you studying? And she's so proud that she's doing this, right? So that means that whole thing like this, endless possibilities with your 5 sense organs. So therefore, you get.
If you look at many classical musicians, they're also very evolved people.
Extremely evolved.
They go through deeply into one thing,
Very deep.
and they evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. That is true. But what we, they are brilliant. Absolutely. Now I will tell you one thing, which is when we were living in Bangkok, there was this group of musicians. They came, and they were all IT professionals from Bangalore, right? So we asked them, so we said, they are very busy professionals, but they had come to Bangkok to perform for 1 or 2 nights, these songs. So we said, why? And they dedicate a lot of their time in singing and all. So we said, how come you have so much time and dedication for music? And what he told me was something which was amazing. He said that every note in classical, when you're singing classical music, right? So you have ragas and different notes. And he says, generally when you start rendering those ragas, you yourself can recognize that, let's say here is sa, your voice cords either reach here or reach here. Okay? And he says when they reach that particular place, exact, neither little up or down, he says the pleasure that it gives us is something which is, they are totally in harmony.
True.
Harmony with the whole universe. Exactly.
When you join classical music, the first thing they do is they match your
They match.
want to see which suits your voice.
Exactly.
That's the first
And then just that hitting that right note, they are in harmony with themselves and the universe. And it creates a lot of pleasure. So one thing is, so that means, but it is endless. Our teacher was telling that he also has a very fine ear for music, and he loves music. At one point in his life, he had to make a decision whether he was going to be a musician or he was going to take to philosophy. So he says music, he decided to be his hobby, and then he took to Vedanta. Because what happens is that then you're taken, the whole life is dedicated to that. It's beautiful, but it is something which is still partial discovery. not the totality. Okay, so therefore the five senses are the ones.
I have a question. Can you have dedicate yourself to a discipline, to a subject, at the same time pursue?
Yeah, absolutely. This is
We are not exclusive.
We are not. No, that is true. What here?
No, but if somebody wants to become a guru, then he has to spend his whole life.
Absolutely. See, the thing is that when we talk about two kind of lifestyles that are available for somebody who's pursuing moksha, one is what we call sannyasa, the other one is karma yoga. Karma yoga means you continue to live in your life, but you understand that the purpose of human life is moksha. Okay? So that means that becomes a primary goal. Okay? So therefore, here he says, according to Veda and Upanishads, human life is meant for moksha. Moksha means personal freedom. Okay? So therefore, once that is ascertained, then everything else, what? Your whole sense, exactly. So this is what, when the buddhi is cultivated, when you understand that moksha is what I want, okay, you are not denying the horses, you are using their capacity to what? Take you, exactly. So they are not all just uncultured horses running around here and there. We are not talking about not having the horses either, or to blind them, and no, right? It is using all the capacities that you have in your body and in your mind in many different fields also, but towards one ultimate goal of self-discovery and self-freedom. This is what we call moksha. This is what is Atma Vinigraha. Okay? Where this body and mind is a gift from the universe, and you are given 80, 90, 100 years with this body, mind and sense. Either you can waste it away, okay, into meaningless things, or sometimes highly meaningful but partial things, okay, or you can get the totality. So that is a possibility. The more intelligent you are, the more you use it to accomplish what is the ultimate human goal. This is what we call Atma Vinigraha. Okay? So with this, so these are certain things that are.
What we are doing now, I mean, I have a very, very basic question. What we are doing now are characteristic of an evolved person.
No. Arjuna asked his question, what is Gneyam and what is Jnanam? What is to be known and what is means of knowledge? Okay? So what Lord Krishna is answering is means of knowledge. So means of knowledge, it can be answered in many different ways. Here the way he chooses is, if you were to know this reality about yourself, then these are the means. Unless you have all these qualities, you will not understand the final reality about yourself. So that's why you need to develop these qualities. If you,
These are the qualities that you need in you.
in order for you to understand that final reality about
Krishna
yourself.
also recognizes that there is no perfection. This is an ongoing practice.
It's an ongoing, exactly, because
It's like you want to go to school, you need to have a pencil and all those
without this, that final goal is not reached. But what is,
the lifetime if we don't achieve the
yeah, then it will continue.
There's
It's in lifetime. Yeah.
Next class, just like next
Kya
class.
jaldi hai, jaldi hai.
Next, like those serials which never end, no? No. And we, by the way, do the same thing. One life after the other, same problem, same the same things, exactly. So that is what, right? So now, with this attitude, this generally, what we think is that this is an end of human life. To cultivate all these, here it is a means to an end. That is the difference. Okay, you need this for what? For that Gneyam. What is that Gneyam? We will see in the next class. Okay,
Chapter 13-12.
that is chapter 13-12. Exactly.
Okay, I had one more question also. You kept referring to your people in your life or whatever. we really don't know anything about you. You mind sharing where you studied, when you went to America, when you went to
How did you get to
How expect you to going to
So that is okay. So
if you have any
yeah, I will. No, I don't have any issue. So I will first close and then I will tell. Okay. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.